Welcome to Two Humans Talking, the podcast that talks about what it takes to be healthy and stay healthy in this modern, fast paced world. I'm your host, Tiffany Simms, and today I am here with Miss Cath Llyod, all the way from England. And I am so excited to have this conversation with you today.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you so much for asking me, inviting me on.
You're
It's a
so
pleasure.
welcome. Thank you for your diligence when technology was being a struggle to like make it work. And so I think that's a really good like segue into what we're going to talk about today is like how do you stay honest with yourself when things are going sideways to know if you're on the right path, if you're taking your foot off the pedal, if you're doing the things that you're supposed to. Because let's be real, we all have a friend who we're watching their train wreck happen and we're like and you hear the words that are coming out of their mouth and you're sitting there going, you are lying to yourself. Like, are you kidding me? Do you really think that's true? Because you're lying to yourself if you believe that to be true. And so I'm really excited to chat with you about that today, Miss Cath. And so
Brilliant. Can't wait to
as
get going.
yeah, can you share a little bit about yourself? Like, so we know you're from England. What makes you you?
What makes me me is really, I suppose, is my upbringing, my values from my parents. I think as well the difficult times I've been through and come out the other end. The support and love of my husband, my kids, how they all challenge you in lots of different ways, and how I have helped myself to keep going through the tough times so that I can love my life, live my life, be my life, and also support other people because without all of that I wouldn't have something to share with other people.
Isn't it so funny that like when we're in it, we're always asking like, why is this happening to me? Like, when am I going to catch a break? And the truth is, it's like actually it's preparing you for something. It gets to become
Yes,
part of your strength and your skills and your ability as you move forward.
absolutely. And we don't realize that until a lot further on later down the line. When you're in the next thing that's a real struggle. And as long as you can learn from yourself, learn from your mistakes, accept those mistakes, acknowledge them, accept them for what they are, then you're going to continually understand yourself better so that the next time you get in a really tricky situation or a painful, difficult situation, you have a whole fountain of knowledge, a great toolbox to be able to dip into and use to help you manage a lot more easily.
Oh. Now, from my experience, most of us who walk start writing books and start coaching businesses and really make some of our lessons, our life work, it's because they were
Mhm.
a lesson that we learned, we felt the hard
Yes.
way. And so, Kath, how did you like getting honest with yourself? How does that come into play for you? Like, how did we get here?
So in 1987, my dad decided to transition to Joan. And I was 23, and you might think, well, you're grown up, you should be able to manage it. But back in 1987, there was no Mr. Google to turn to. I didn't have any friends whose parents had transitioned. I didn't know anybody who had transitioned. It wasn't talked about. And I really, really struggled with it. And because of that struggle, I had, I suppose, forced myself into being in victim mode. So I could never find my way out until I rock bottomed
Oh.
when it was obvious that I really wasn't managing. I was constantly in a struggle. And then I had to force myself to start managing it. But then it was still a difficult process for me. And in the end, I found that I just had to sit down over a long period of time and just start working out why I was feeling like this. And yes, I refer it to, rather like being a private detective, you've got to go down those dark and dingy passageways of your mind to find the answers so that you can get yourself nearer to the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's that putting your hand on your heart that can really help you connect with your values, your belief systems, how you want life to be, what you want to be thinking and feeling, and then to start putting things into action to help you get to where you want to be. What do I want to be thinking and feeling instead? What do I want to be doing? Because what we think and feel will have an impact on how we act up or act out and behave.
1,000,000%. There's something you said, which was like, I was acting the victim. I don't ever think like in the moment that we think like we don't know we're being someone's like, don't be a victim. And you're like, how dare you say that? These are my feelings. They're very valid. Like, back up, buddy. And so, like, when you look back now, what kind of things were you feeling and experiencing that you didn't really maybe didn't know were victimy, but that you look back and you're like, my God, I was playing the victim. I was making it all about me. Like, what type of things were you experiencing?
Why is my dad wanting to change gender? You know, he's my dad. I don't want him to change. And what if it doesn't work out? What if our family doesn't work out? And this is the craziest thing is, how are other people gonna react to me when they know my dad is now a woman? If I laughed out of shock when my dad told me, everybody else is gonna laugh. And I wasn't, and yes, now I think that is the craziest thing because, my dad had known that he was different from the age of 5. So he'd been battling with this for 45 years. And there's me at the age of 23, at the age of 30, going, woe is me, life's awful, I can't cope with
How
this.
dare you do this to me? What is wrong
Exactly,
with
you're
you?
my dad. You are my consistent figure in my life. What's wrong with you? You know, and but once I had, and the thing is, I feel it took longer because I could separate my life from my parents' life because I was married, I got my own home, I got my kids. This is how long it took for me to totally come to terms with it. But then, I gave up my full-time teaching career to start my life coaching business, but then realized that my parents needed a lot more support than I realized. And it wasn't until that I spent proper time with them, many hours a day, that I could really see that my dad was still there, but in a different shell. My dad was still the sensitive, kind, caring, considerate person, but with a different name, looked different. And, and we have to get used to change, don't we? Whether we want that change or not. And if we fight it, that's when we start getting the problems of going into victim mode, and we're stopping the natural flow of our development and the whole process to come out the other side. We're constantly fighting it.
Now, when you like the trick, the catalyst that led you down this path of like, woe is me. How could you do this to me? What are people going to think about us? Like, did you think about how this was going to impact you? Impact me? Like, how dare you? Which is so funny to think about as an adult back. Like, of course your parents thought about that. Like, that was probably the reason it took so long, was because they were so overly worried about how it was going to affect you, right? What was that like relationship dynamics in the home like? Like, what did they change when, because you were having all of these, like, trying to figure out what everything, what this change meant for you? Or,
Don't think they realise the impact because I would go in and I'd be smiley and, you know, put
mm,
keep everything subdued. The difficult bit was the run up to it, the atmosphere within the house. And I didn't know until I was told that my mum actually had known for 10 years. So she was battling with that. She was battling with keeping her marriage together, keeping her job going. I would go home and often unexpected, like you do as kids, because you think you can just rock up at any time. And they go, "Oh, brilliant." There would be, well, where's my dad? Oh, he'll be down in a minute. Well, why is he taking so long? And all of this. And actually, my dad was probably upstairs dressed as Joan, but then had to change and go back to being dad and come downstairs pretending to be dad. So no wonder he'd got a strained smile on his face because he was living a double life in the home, but
yeah.
not outwardly, openwardly.
'Cause, I think this brings up such a great like conversation point, which is like when change happens, like every person that is indirectly or directly involved in a change has their own experience of the impact and what it means.
And what we were talking about before with victim mode was, when this scenario is taking place, was, is this to do with me? Going back into yourself, are they not pleased to see me? Do they not love me? Have I been a pain in the backside and I don't know what I've done? All of this, it wasn't to do with me. It's just, unfortunately, I had turned up without ringing them and saying, just, it's just going to pop home. I'll be in about an hour. And all of that, all of that flurry of change for both my parents would have dissipated. It would have, you know, helped them get into the state they needed to be to welcome their daughter home.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And but when I think about it as a 40-year-old woman, all of the emotions you had were very age appropriate because you didn't really know anything beyond yourself. You didn't know how to hold space for other people yet. You didn't know how to think about the multiple scenarios. You really did only know your own universe, right? And so, like, when I think about grown women getting stuck in that, like, making something that's not about them all about them, it really does reflect where they stopped developing, like what age we
Mhm,
stopped continuing to grow and evolve in our emotional intelligence and where we were halted, or
mhm,
the last moment that they really felt safe, so that now something just hit the fan and they revert back to that, like the last time they felt safe in their body at whatever age that was for them. And so I don't know where that came from, but it came up. Does any of that with your life experience like trigger anything, or I don't know.
And I mean, that's a really good point that you've made, but when we get frightened and scared, that's when we often revert back, isn't it, to something that we know, whether it's good or bad.
Yep.
And this is why, say, addiction is so difficult to manage, isn't it? You know, because somebody could be sober for 9 years and then something happens and they go into default mode, or could very easily go into default mode. And this is the same with the majority of people, and we have to find our way through it. But hopefully, with tapping into your self honesty, tapping into the whys and what's, and then managing through it. And I've used exactly those skills that I talk about, in my first book, When Dad Became Joan, to help me through other difficult times. And so now I'm thankful that I went through all of that heartache, because I learned so much about myself. I understand myself so much better, that when I do come through tricky, yes, I'll go through that little bit of woe is me, victim mode. But it's like, hang on a minute, this is ridiculous. Come on. You know how to sort this out and tap into those transferable skills so that you can work it all through by putting your hand on your heart and really listening to yourself.
Yes. And I love that so much because like it shows our ability to grow and evolve and not want to live in the suck anymore. And when we can recognize that, our past prepared us for this moment and to like have that moment of awareness. I don't know about for you, but for me, like in the beginning, I would get so frustrated with myself of like when I'd have that like moment of realization of like, oh, we've been here before. Pause, time out. Here's the skills we're going to use. And I would get so frustrated with myself for like letting it happen, letting me for having the response that I did, for being destructive for a moment, for whatever temper tantrum I was having. And I would get so upset. And now fast forward a few more years and there's no judgment, there's no feelings against it because it's like, oh, of course this is what's happening. Like pause. And I do it too. It's like heart on heart. Like I'm safe. I'm okay. Like let's just recognize what's happening. Just a week ago, I my car had my antifreeze line had exploded in my car. I didn't know that. All I know is there was smoke coming from my hood, right? And I'd never been through that before. And I'm like panicking. And I'm like trying to be a responsible grown up. And I'm trying to do all this stuff. And I'm like on the phone with my mom and I was like, I know that it's probably fine and you're like, no one would want me to die, but what if the car catches on fire because you want me to drive it home? And like, I'm like sobbing like a 5-year-old. And all of a sudden I like took a deep breath and I was like, Mom, I'm good. I was just scared. I've never done this before. I'm okay. Like, I'm here again. Thank you. I'll call you when I get home. Right. And it was just like, oh, the reason I'm having this reaction that I'm so ashamed of, why am I sobbing like a 5-year-old? Oh, I'm scared. I'm nervous. This is uncomfortable and it's an unknown. And like I
Yes.
have feelings about that. Like those are valid feelings to have. Okay. And once I saw the feelings and why I was scared and like what was happening, all of a sudden it was just like not a big deal anymore because then all of a sudden all of the things I knew how to do came to the surface and I got what I needed to get done.
Absolutely.
Right. But
Absolutely.
we do go through that phase of like shame and guilt of like, why is this happening to you still? I thought you dealt with this. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm human. I'm having an emotion. So now that we know that, where are we going to go from here, my friend?
See, and I like the bit that you put my friend on the end, because at the end of the day, you should be your own best friend because you have known yourself the longest. Nobody else has known you as long as you have known you, you
That's
know. And we have to be kind to ourselves, even though we've said something we shouldn't have said, we've shouted at somebody that we love and it wasn't their fault. But again, It's hand on your heart. Why did I do that? Just like you were doing about your car. Well, it was this, that, and the other. And it's okay to go and say that I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Please forgive me. Not
Hmm.
that I hope you'll forgive me. Please forgive me
Yeah.
so that we can carry on.
Yes. I am so sorry. Like I had some stuff going on. Like, but what, and like you're saying, like, what if we talk to, there's two things that came up while you were sharing that I was just was like gold. One, I'd never really thought about this. I'm the only person that has known me as long as me. And someone might think, well, my parents birthed me. I think they've known me longer than I've consciously known myself. But you're the only person who knows this version of you in every version you've been. Because there are other people who they may have been here for the ride. They don't know you. They don't know the in.
Nobody else truly knows what you're thinking and feeling and why you're thinking and feeling that. And we don't know it a lot of the time because our brains just go into automatic reaction and we are saying stuff, doing stuff, thinking stuff that we haven't consciously decided to because our brains are on a different wavelength. They've got a different agenda. And so that's why we have to slow it down. That's why the breathing is good. The mindfulness is good. The quiet time is good. The your hand on your heart is good because it's reconnecting with what's really going on
Yeah.
inside of yourself.
And what if more of us as women, when things are going sideways, what if we just talk to ourselves like we talk to a friend? And like this came up a month ago. I was recording a promo video for a program that I was launching, and I had never really done that before. It was a new skill for me, and I had a girlfriend who's done a million of them, and she's like, well, why don't I come body double with you? Because I was sharing with her that I was frustrated with myself that this thing has been on my to-do list for 2 weeks and I still haven't hit record and done it. And I was like, I don't know what my resistance is, but for whatever reason, I'm having a really hard time going. And she was like, well, what if I just body doubled with you so that you had someone to talk to? Because you always say that you're so much better in conversation. You feel more natural. It feels more like genuine. And she's like, so what if I just come there so you can talk to me? And as we're going through this, I started getting flustered because it was like one moment after another, like I'd have to like redo it and like try again. And she said that watching me was such a gift because like I would sit here and I'd be like, Tiffany, it's okay. This is how it works. Like you've never done this before. Of course it's taking you a few tries. Just take a deep breath. And then a few minutes later, something would happen and I would get flustered and I would like lose my words. And I'd be like, no, you don't need a snack. You just need to sit here. It's uncomfortable. Of course, it's uncomfortable. And she was saying that, and I had never really thought about it, but I do that all gosh darn day. And she was like, it was so beautiful to watch you coach yourself and hold space for yourself
Yeah,
while you were processing that everything was uncomfortable and new, and that you just had to continue practicing being this person you'd never been before. And she was
yeah.
just like, so inspiring, like beautiful. And I was embarrassed for a second because I was like, oh my God, someone just saw me talking to myself, right? Like, but isn't that it?
Absolutely. And the fact is that you taught yourself through the process, but actually you taught your friend something as well. So that's even better that she went away thinking, oh, wow, that was really good. I've learned something here. I'm going to put that into practice. Hopefully, she did put it into
Yeah.
practice.
But like, that's the thing. So I love that. Like, are you being honest with yourself? And being honest with yourself, my takeaway from our conversation is like when we first started, my thought of being honest with myself was like, are you looking in the mirror and are you like seeing things the way they really are? And now that we've like had this conversation and you've given me a gift of being able to like see my stories through what you're sharing, it's like, oh, being honest with yourself isn't that hard conversation always in the mirror. Sometimes it really is just like having the conversations with yourself about what you know to be true in these moments and workshopping it live time to like know where you're going and what's really going on and how to resolve it.
And that's really important point, because sometimes we don't know the answer there and then, but we can talk our way through it, and how you want to be. So, you know, the next big thing that happened for me was 2017. My son was out mountain biking, came off his bike and broke his neck, and is now tetraplegic. So he's only got movement from his shoulders upwards. So the point I'm trying to make is, yes, it was hugely traumatic. But what I learned from my dad, from going through that process with my dad, was how to manage me. Okay. So, and I remember the third day in, we were at the hospital. I remember, beautiful sunny day up in Scotland. And I sat outside and I thought, I'm not breathing. Hang on a minute. I must be breathing, because if I wasn't breathing, I'd be dead. But I was breathing so shallowly because I was so tense and anxious. It felt as if I wasn't breathing at all. And, it got to, we were preparing his house, his new home, and it was very fractious between me and his dad. And I was staying up in Edinburgh, up in Scotland, in Edinburgh, to sort of keep the house, work on the house moving. My husband had to come back down into England to run his business, and it was all really tense. And the last thing my husband said to me was, "By the time I get back, I want all that hardcore in the skip, not." Bye, I love you, a kiss, a hug, I'll speak to you later. It was just this in the scale. And I thought, right then, and I use quite a lot of bad language.
Fan, buddy.
I'm gonna get, because there was about 1.5 tons of sand and hardcore that needed to go in this skip. All right, to be taken away. I thought, right then, you star, star, star. That is going to be in that skip in 2 hours. I'd given myself 2 hours to do it. And in that time, because I was all set to finish the marriage. That's how bad it had got. What have I learned through my life? What have my parents taught me? And by the end of that job, which it didn't take me 2 hours, it took me less than 2 hours. So I gave myself a pat on the back. I worked out that whatever happens, I will be okay. And we're still together. Our relationship is better than it ever was before. And I'd worked it. And then the days up until he came back up to Scotland, I'd worked it out. I thought, I've just got to get through this. It's a tricky patch. No, and it's tricky because of X, Y, and Z. Our emotions are both crazy. We are just functioning to get through this. And I worked it out, because I knew what I wanted. I wanted a whole family. I didn't want a split family. I wanted a whole family, a strong family.
You know what question has really served me and been so valuable to me here lately is, why did that upset me?
What
And
I've
like,
just said.
well, like when I get triggered in my life, when
Mm-hmm,
someone says something
mm-hmm.
off, or like it's like, and I get to have that like visceral reaction, I've really learned to I've really been practicing pausing and just asking myself, like, what about that upset me? Why did that trigger me that way? And like, rather than like focusing on whatever it was that was said or done or whatever, like, what meaning did I assign to this interaction? And it's been eye opening to me, because it's like, oh, it didn't actually have anything to do with the dishes or where we parked the car or if the lawn was mowed. Like there's those underlying things of like the meaning of another example of this, or I feel that you don't hear me here. And so like it's like those
Yes.
core needs of
Yes.
what was really going on. And sometimes I don't know if you experienced this, but it's like I realized that it's like a need from when I was 10 that I no longer actually desire. And so then once I realize that, that same scenario no longer triggers me anymore, because now it's like, oh, that's not an unresolved or unmet need. But I had to like ask myself the questions and figure out why it was important.
Yes, absolutely. And this is the thing about self-honesty, is asking yourself the questions. But so often when we are stressed, anxious, depressed, we close ourselves off to it because we don't want to go down that road because it's too difficult. And
Mhm.
so we shovel it all into the back of the closet of our mind. Oh, well, it'll go away. So, my fairy godmother
Never
will
in
sort it
the
all
history
out.
of ever has it gone away.
Exactly. And the thing is, you know, you'll notice that the closet starts to get a bit full, so you buy a stronger catch and put that on your closet door. So, and then you got a padlock, and a key and all of this, a big chest up against the door. Because one day that closet door will burst open and all of that stuff is going to come tumbling out. And it's going to come tumbling out at the most inappropriate time. And then you've got even more tidying up to do instead of methodically going through everything, controlling in a controlled way and managing it. Okay, that thing I shoved in the back of the closet, let's get it out. Put my hand on my heart. Why was I so emotional? Why was it upsetting me so much? Why did I behave so badly to my best friend? Why did I shout at the cashier when I went to go and get my grocery shopping? She was only doing a job, you know, and take the control back, because otherwise all that stuff in that closet is controlling you.
So, so good. Kath, this has been such a great conversation. Like, thank you. Because as I shared, like my takeaways and my transformation and what I thought being honest with myself was versus like where I landed in our conversation. So I really appreciate you coming and just sharing with us today. How do people connect with you outside of the show?
I've got my website, which is very easy. It's cathlloyd.co.uk. And all my social media is on the bottom there. So I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, but all the little connections are there. I've got blogs. I've got a short online course about how to manage and learn about yourself. And also I've got my two books. So I've got When Dad Became Joan, okay, and how I did or didn't manage. But then the second part is the self-help bit. And then four steps to emotional freedom. And that is about managing your self-honesty, acknowledging what you're thinking and feeling, working out why you're thinking and feeling like that, where do you want to be going, and then how to start getting to where you want to be. And it would be lovely to connect with you, chat with you. And I offer one-to-one coaching as well to help you get through the drudge of the past so that you can look forward to a life that you want to lead in the future.
Absolutely beautiful. If you've heard me say it once, you've heard me say it a million times at this point. Go be a human and connect with other humans in this world. We were not designed to life alone, even if we thought it would be simpler that way. We're meant to have human connections. And so today's episode spoke to you. Go connect with Kath and I on the internet, wherever you enjoy connecting, whatever your favorite platform is. Cath, thank you so much for being here. And with that, that's
Brilliant.
yes, ma'am. So with
Thank
that,
you.
talking, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this episode as inspiring and actionable as I did. If you're ready to stop just surviving and start living a life where your health, your relationships, and your career work together without the burnout, then it's time that you join the Modern Women's Society. Inside, I'll walk you through my life GPS system, a proven blueprint to help you have it all while thriving. You'll gain tools, coaching, and the kind of clarity that brings big dreams to life without the stress, overwhelm, guilt, and shame that the modern woman is used to. We're going to create a life where you feel energized and excited to wake up every day and fulfilled when you put your head on the pillow. Click the link below to learn more and join countless other women who are redefining success on their terms. Because the life you've dreamed about is closer than you think. I'll see you on the inside.